Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app. Hub24 is on a mission to empower advisors to deliver better financial futures for their clients. They are dedicated to customer service excellence and delivering innovative product solutions that create value for advisors and their clients. These are just some of the reasons why advisors rate them number one for overall satisfaction and why their managed portfolio solution has been rated best in market 5 years running. Hub24 believes nothing happens in isolation. So they're working together with advisors, licensees, and industry leaders to leverage their data and technology expertise to help solve key challenges in the delivery of financial advice, so more Australians can access cost-effective advice. Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and today I'm joined by Andrew Ferguson. G'day, mate.
How are you going?
Very well, thank you. Now, you're from Webster's Wealth Partners here in Brisbane, and we're very lucky to be able to record this live in your boardroom. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having
me. Now,
me.
do you want to give us a quick overview of your business at the moment?
Okay, well, look, we're just a small boutique-sized business, sort of 3-4 type of advisors. We run a small office, and we've been running a lot of clients over the last 10 years, and we're just working towards restructuring the business in the current sort of environment, make sure it looks right and it's manageable. And
you and everybody else at the same time.
We've been running around like a mad chicken.
Yeah, crazy times. Now, let's go back and explore your journey, because you've done a lot of things along the way in building this business to what it is today. How did you get into it?
Well, look, my wife was a mortgage broker, and I was in hospitality at the time, and I was selling my business. I'd been running a hospitality business 3 years, and it was during the floods and up and down of it was a crazy time. 6 months of rain and then extremely busy times after that, and then flatlined. So she'd been broking for 5 or 6 years doing that, and working as a broker in a financial planning business that was high volume. They were just making telephone calls and bringing in all sorts of clients, not very financially savvy clients. And she ended up doing more budgeting and, restructuring for them as a broker than helping them get into a decent position. And 12 months later, they'd be back again in the same sort of position. Anyway, we're looking to buy a mortgage broking book, and then we just couldn't find one, really. We had a few people try to grift us out of a few assets that weren't actually for sale and trying to sell them. Anyway, we eventually started looking at planning books. And at that stage, we essentially weren't even in the industry before we bought our first business.
Wow, it's incredible, isn't it?
It's very, very odd.
Yeah. So that's an interesting process that you went through when it comes to, you sort of mentioned the idea that it's not as easy as it looks to purchase a business.
No, it's not. Well, look at it. It's fraught with danger. It's quite an easy thing to do, but it's not easy to come out the other side without getting into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, funnily enough, not everything's written on the label.
No, there was so many different problems with the first transaction. It was we took over from a lady who got banned by ASIC for general scallywag behaviour. Essentially not changing with the times. She just did whatever she used to do, didn't do the paperwork.
Yep.
Everyone was set in the same risk profile, and during the GFC, everyone was in double geared products. And then 2007, most of them lost a fair bit of money.
Yep.
Claim after claim.
And so when did you purchase?
That was about 2012.
Yeah, okay. So they'd been through a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
They come out the other side. She'd said, no, I'm going to sell. And you'd come along a little bit naive, you could probably say. And said,
obviously.
Yeah, this sounds okay, and walked into that.
Yeah, well, we sort of came in as the cleanup crew with that business was with Wellshore, which was they helped us a lot.
Yep.
They wanted us to essentially, we did all the work, and then they looked over everything just to make sure, as a licensee, to make sure that they weren't going to get into any more trouble, because there was claim after claim after claim for that lady. She just put her head in the sand, and just ASIC struck her off. She had this grifter boyfriend who was a share trader, influencing everyone.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's another story altogether.
So you guys came in as the knight in shining armor, just wrapping your arms around the clients and making sure that they're okay, and then making sure they were structured properly, and from here on in, was that a difficult? I mean, I know it's going to be a difficult thing, but was it a thing where a lot of clients in went, well, no, I'll go somewhere else? Or?
Look, Stephanie did a magnificent job, because she was the only one who was technically had a FP at the time.
Yep, the calls.
So I quickly got mine while we were trading.
Yep.
So I could get on the wagon, because she was seeing 20 odd clients a week.
Yep.
Just trying to meet them all, get around them all, say hello.
Yep.
We had a team of people feeding them in, and we had a box full of paper. There was no systems, no anything back then. And then just Stephanie had to learn on the fly, sink or swim it was.
Yeah, this is an incredible journey. Obviously, as you mentioned, you've gone from boxes of paper that were mixed up to fantastic systems and processes in place. But we'll follow that journey along.
Yeah, step by step.
So tell us what happened next. You rallied around those clients. You made sure they were okay. You then, which I guess you were chasing your tail because you're still on the same old systems.
Yeah, well, that was that. Well, we had to build them from scratch.
Yep.
And it was a bad transaction, because we only. This is one of the things we learnt when we're given the paperwork for the revenue. We thought we were buying X, $100,000 worth of revenue. Anyway, because of Asgard's old SIS software, and I can't quite remember what the commission software, it's gone now. It would, if you had an existing client and you do a new piece of work for them, the software couldn't split up whether an upfront fee was upfront or ongoing back in those days. And so the revenue statements that we got when we were doing our due diligence, they had these large, we thought we had a whole heap of large clients, but that money was coming through in the ongoing column.
That was the new business stuff.
That was a lot of little insurance or whatever it may have been. And so we only ended up with 2/3 X when we took over. And so there wasn't even enough revenue to cover the costs of, how we'd set the business up based on,
it's crazy,
how it was represented. So it ended up in a blue in court. So that was an extremely expensive and horrible period of time, that plus doing all the work.
Yeah, that's crazy. So that's really just sort of like diving into the deep end or being thrown into the deep end with a lot of that stuff.
Into the fire.
Yeah, into the fire.
Into the fire.
We're not in a pool, we're in a fire. Okay. So was that the first 12 months or 18 months or 2 years? How long did that take?
Oh, it was a couple of years, that mission.
Yep. And so then you're a 2-year-old business, sort of coming out of the fire with that. What happened after that?
Oh, look, we just needed more revenue. Look, we had far too many clients, far too many people to look after. And, it was interesting. The ex-advisor had sort of categorised them A, B, C, D, but more on relationship. And I understand why she did that now. And it to a degree, it makes sense. But, anyway, we had to purchase another book off. Wellshore went under. We could see that they were, losing staff members. One day there wasn't even a receptionist when we rang up, and it was whittled down to about, 2 or 3 people.
Yep.
Because the Queen, he was the state manager. He ended up getting the whole group in trouble by doing advice on some sort of fund that was not on their APL. Then the CEO of Wellshore got banned for life. So
right. So this is no fault of your own. You've been peddling and like crazy to try and get yourself out of a fire, and then all of a sudden now it's something that out of your control.
Yeah, well that was it. And then we said, right, well look, we've got to find another dealer group, because this is just, the position is untenable.
Yep.
And they're going to, we're going to sink if we stay here.
Yep.
So we needed I know really a bit more revenue to even meet some lending criteria.
Yep. Because when you borrow to buy a book, you've got to make sure that you've got revenue coming in, and there's a lot of governance from the bank's point of view.
Well, that's it. And look, we gave them the statements and said, here's what the revenue is, and we only just fit into the policy then. And then when it turned up that we didn't even have the revenue to begin with, put us in a very difficult position. Yep. So we had to we were looking around for a dealer group, and then we got in touch with FPSA, which are the Heiners who own Netwealth.
Yep.
And they, back in those days, they were running a dealer group.
Yes.
And they were nice enough to sell us a small part of their Bridgeport business.
And so was that subject to you going across to their license?
Essentially.
Yep.
Well, it was a deal. They helped us out. Yep. It wasn't a lot of revenue,
yep.
But, $50K was enough to get us up above that policy or that lending criteria.
Yep. So technically that's the second book you've purchased.
Yeah, and that was purely to get a loan,
to
pay out the last part of the last transaction.
Yep, right. Okay, so borrowing more to pay out more, and as you go, tell us about that one. How did that go?
That was actually a very good little book. There was about 100 people in there, and they were all back in those days. They didn't need to be serviced to keep generating revenue. So that's where I sunk my teeth in. Did a lot of insurance work. Did a lot of taking clients out of old products that were expensive.
Yep.
Mickey Mouse sort of super insurance business to get my head around the industry.
Good opportunity for you to grow that book into a solid business. Did you do how was your due diligence on that business based on your first experience?
Oh, it was a lot better.
Yeah.
We knew what we were talking about.
You knew what to look out for all of a sudden.
Yeah, I've become, well, in my opinion, from where I was an expert on the contractual side of things, from where we started, we've learned so much, and we've done 4 transactions now. So I'm very, the amount of detail I go into when I'm looking at an acquisition. We're not going to be doing that again. But
I'm going to ask you about that in a minute too when we get to it. But because I want to know what that detail looks like. So because I think it's really important.
It's critical.
Yeah,
critical.
So the second book was good.
Yeah, it was good. Look, it would have, I turned enough revenue out of it in a year or two to pay for it.
Yep.
And increased it. So it worked out really well.
Yep. Still paying down debt. Still paying down loan.
Forever, every day.
Where did you get to from there?
Well, then we still had we kept growing client numbers. The referrals coming over. We still needed more revenue because the costs of running it was still, we're only just making a wage.
Yep.
And that's the trap that you get into.
Isn't that interesting? Like you buy a business, but you're just buying a job.
Yeah, it is. It's something people need to be very aware of.
Yep. So what was the step?
Look, so then we realised, we don't have any more capacity for doing full service work. I said, look, why don't we buy a couple of risk books, because we can generate revenue out of them. They can sit there as income, and we just go through them and when we've got time. And I've hit those really quite hard.
Yep.
Because what did we buy? I can't quite remember. This juncture was maybe $250,000 worth of risk income.
Yep.
And there's a few old legacy products in there, some very old expensive jobs. So they were an easy transition over to some cheap, affordable and much better position for the client.
Money.
Yeah.
And so that was what year was that approximately?
Well, look, that was probably 4 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. So before all the changes in that in that environment.
Yeah, but as the lift legislation started to come in, it was probably a year before that, before they started cascading the commissions down to where they are now.
And so those 2 books, were that in quick succession?
At the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because we wanted to make sure we got up over our expenses.
Yeah. Okay.
And then.
So it kind of feels like it was a little bit of chasing your tail with revenue and then expenses and those sorts of things all the way through.
Absolutely.
Which is a pretty big thing for, I think, most business owners.
Well,
go through that.
Look, if you don't set these businesses up and structure isn't right from day one, it is really difficult.
Yep.
And it puts a lot of stress on everyone. But if you do it right, it's it's terrific.
Yeah. Did you feel like your structure was right at that point?
No.
Looking back, you probably did at the time, but looking back, you think
No, it was better though. It
Yeah.
was better.
Yeah.
It's only in the last few years that we've got everything. It took us 5, 6, 7 years to start to plan out.
Before you could look back and go, actually, now I really need to know what we're doing, or I need to know these things, or we need to do these things.
Look, we know we're in a position where we don't take any business that comes our way.
Yep.
We say this is what, from our referrers, we say this is what a client needs to look like for us to even look at it.
Okay. So you're quite clear around the demographics and the suitability criteria.
Yeah, that's it. Well, there's only so many, and in the middle of that, I got crook for about 5 years. So that took a fair bit out of the steam out of my ability to work, a couple of children.
Very hard to find the time then to run a busy business.
And that's what's changed everything. This from when we hit the second child. There was you lost half a person at least. Yeah. So now that we've got to say, like, the client needs to look like, well, essentially a perfect client for us to be able to put them on. Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey, isn't it, all the way through to now? And so what about those clients that came on originally? Have you been?
Yeah, they're all still with us. Look, we really didn't lose. We hardly lost anyone out of the transit. You can lose if you're not like really good with people. You will. There'll be a lot of drop off, and if you haven't got your contracts right, you're going to end up paying for revenue you never received, and you'll be in even more trouble. That's why doing the contracts is so important.
What tips would you give when it comes to the importance of the contracts? Is there anything people should be looking out for?
Oh, look,
both as a buyer and a seller.
Well, look, firstly, you got to make sure that the revenue's there. That's the most important thing. They talk about a rise and fall provision. There's no rise provision. It's always just a fall. You make it a fall provision.
Yep.
You've got to make a provision to make sure that if clients are non-communicable, you can't get in touch with them after X amount of attempts. You write them off, whether you pick them back up again at a later stage or not. Yeah, I've got about 3 or 4 sort of. I haven't looked at a contract for about 4 years, so I can't remember all of them. But you've got to make sure that you've set it up properly, and you need to write the contract yourself.
Yep.
And even a solicitor, we went and see a specialist solicitor in financial services, and even she knew the law, but she didn't know the industry as well as I did from an acquisition perspective. Yeah,
there's law and then there's pitfalls, isn't there?
Yeah.
Those businesses, you probably purchase them are based on multiple of revenue. How do you see that as a model? And obviously, it's sort of one of those things I've spoken to people, they don't sort of think that's going to be the way of the future.
Well, I don't know look for the small books. I don't know what else you're going to do. They're going to be very low multiples from now on, I'd say. And then you're just going to be talking about an EBIT valuation, which has skyrocketed. What is it? The Forte Asset Solutions, they're selling businesses sort of 7.5 times EBIT once you get over that threshold of a mil.
Yep. But they need to be profitable to do that, obviously.
I'm looking, I always keep my eye and ear out looking at things, and some of them got very small client numbers, and then some of them they might have 15 planners running around, and, they've got similar sort of profitability.
Yeah, inefficiencies left, right and centre.
Well, it just creates dramas. The more people, the more room for error.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Really.
Yep. So tell me about your licensing journey. So that you were still with the old NetWealth license.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the Heiners are super successful with their NetWealth. They started off, I think, back in those days they were talking about they had $3 billion on their platform. Now it's 7 or 8 times that.
Yep.
They're worth a fortune. They just came. We went to the P2Day in Sydney one day, and they said, "Righto, 60 days, we're shutting it down." And so we had to scramble around to go and find another licensee. And every time you go to another licensee, they say, "Righto, you got to do a full statement of advice for every client," and it's far too much.
Yep. Very hard, isn't it, to change?
Well, if you've got lots of people, you've got to start from scratch with every file. And you've given a 12-month period to do it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you've not met your obligations under the exit deed.
Yep. Fair enough.
And you're not in control of those exit deeds.
The old exit deed. Tell me about and for those people that everybody's got an exit deed. It's good that you read it and know what's in it. Tell me about from there. So what happened after you were given 60 days?
Well, we met with a whole heap of different. They wanted to hand everyone over to Fortnum. They just said, "Right, you can have.
Yep.
You have the people." I don't think there was any transaction. So we met. Fortnum came along to the PD, and then we didn't think it was quite right. And plus, it wasn't. The FPSA was one of the cheapest dealer groups out there at the time. They're a wonderful group, really helpful, and we really liked it there. We would be there if it wasn't.
I think Phil Henderson was there at the time, wasn't he?
Phil Henderson. I can't quite. It rings a bell.
Yeah. FBA. AFA. Phil Henderson. He'll kill me. So what did you do?
Well, we ended up with In Focus.
Yep.
Darren Sidehart, he's a very charismatic man and great group. And then we've been with them. Well, we were with them for only a year or two before. We just found it restrictive, being with dealer groups in general, and the cost and even the compliance that making sure that they're ticking all their boxes.
Yep.
For each dealer group we were with, they would take a sort of 15% of our revenue.
Yeah.
And we just decided that maybe self-licensing was the way to go.
Yep.
Because we just couldn't have the rug pulled out from under us, and our it's a risk to the clients, it's a risk to us, it's a risk to everything.
Yep. So made a decision to go self-license.
Yeah.
Tell me about your journey with technology up into that space, because I want to follow the evolution of your your systems. Because obviously you've got In Focus, got different systems to the network.
Yeah, well that's also very it's tough, because we started off with Coin, then we went to Xplan. Xplan's super expensive, and then Platform Plus is the in-house software with In Focus, and that one wasn't quite the same.
Yep.
It was more it was built as a compliance tool for them.
Yeah.
So it was more about the dealer group than, it was their ability to keep track of all the people underneath them. So I understand it, but we were looking for something that was a bit more advanced.
Yeah, fair enough. It's or a bit more for your systems, your internal client conversations.
Look, we've ended up with the Advisor Logic, which is, for me, I only up until 12 months ago hadn't used any of these systems in, their capacity. I couldn't understand Coin, Xplan, any of them other than finding telephone numbers.
Yeah.
And you're paying $20,000 a year for a
Rolodex. That can use them, and you're not. That's often the way businesses work. You tend to just fall into this is all I need out of it, so I don't push myself to understand what the additional parts of the software can do and how that might benefit.
The modules built with Xplan, they're bolt on, so you don't. Only the paraplanner really has the full suite of software. So the good thing about Advisor Logic is, it's one size fits all, and everyone gets the same thing.
Yep.
And it's just much more intuitive. It's built in the modern sort of way, so you can just essentially look at something and click on it, and it gives you what you want.
Yeah. And how have you gone for the transition from those one software
to
the other?
It's a monster transition to get all the data in and out of these things.
Yep.
It's that on top of doing SOAs every time you move it to AFSL.
Yep.
Going around everyone the way you have to based on your contractual obligations. It's now it's really quick, it's efficient, it's easy to use. It's got this modelling tool that's nothing like anything else in the market. Morningstar have taken it over and pumping huge amounts of money into it. They attach their reports. Everything generates automatically.
Yeah.
So it's much more efficient. It's got lots. The girls probably tell you a lot more about it than what I can. But even from my perspective, I can just go in there and I could even generate a piece of advice if I had to.
It's a good test. It's the litmus test. If I can do it, it's fine.
Yeah.
Tell me about your staff growth over that time, because obviously.
Look, they've probably reduced. We used to have when we started, probably 6, 7 people running around.
Going back to the boxes of paper.
Yeah, well, that's it. We had one person on, a couple of 2 or 3 admin people just scratching around trying to collect data. We would have them put it into at least a format so when, Stephanie, my wife, went into a meeting, she'd at least have a concise executive summary of what was going on, other than just a file
to dig through in front of the client
and look like a fool. So that's where our executive summary came from. So, that's one of the templates that we've built into the new software now. That just auto-generates from all the data feeds. Yeah, look, it's come a long way. Come a long way.
Fantastic. Now, let's get into this bit of a checklist or things that you've created when it comes to buying or selling or purchasing a business, because I think this is equally as important to people selling their books as people purchasing or looking at purchasing businesses. There's obviously a lot of transactions been happening over the last little while, and probably be a few more happening over the next few years. If you were buying a book now, talk me through the process. Where would we be? What tips and advice would you give me if we were looking at where would we start?
Well, look, I think you've got to start and think, what do you want your business to look like before you even get into even thinking about.
Start with the end in mind. Yeah.
Well, it's got the numbers, where the numbers sit, and what is your capacity.
Yep.
How.
Is this one of these? Are you buying a business or buying a job?
Yeah. Well, you got to. It really does trap you if you're going and leveraging everything you've got just about to get into the industry and say, right, I want to be a financial planner. I want to run my own show. You've got to understand how the numbers need to look for it to even be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And, what you're getting yourself in for if you don't structure it properly from day one. And it needs to be sizable. And in my opinion, people just got to be careful, because if you're not well funded, it's rife for danger.
Yeah, okay. Tell me about the concept of, say, if I was looking at purchasing a business right now, making sure that I know understand what my target market or my ideal client would look like, and then look for those clients versus worrying about, looking for the book for sale.
You're either you're in a position where you're going to be working out the back of your car and getting referrals from a source that's reliable and they're good quality clients, and that's one way to go. It's not easy, because for say an accountant to trust you, accountants are not good referrers in general. I was selling a small book of clients to a fellow a couple of years ago. We're just cleaning up our business, and he said he was working in an accountancy practice, at one stage, and that the accountancy practice had set up its own planning division, and the accountants still wouldn't even refer their clients in-house. So to find someone who's going to refer you people that are ideal it's a bit of a unicorn.
Yep. It takes a lot of work,
Well, they've got to trust you, because what are you going to, it affects their business if you make a mistake, and that, then they'd lose a client, and, why would they risk that?
Yep.
Essentially.
Yeah.
They put their name against it. So
they do see it as a risk, don't they?
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is, because, they've sent you over there to do a job, for essentially based on their recommendation.
Their reputation.
And if you muff it up, they could lose, and if it's a client that's really worthwhile looking after, they're going to lose, $10,000, $15,000 worth of business themselves.
Yeah. So that they lose the money, and they lose face, I guess.
Yeah. So that's a hard one. Look, that's the best way to get clients, though. Referrals from a good source.
Yep.
But you've got to keep those costs low, but at the same time, you can't meet somebody, somebody's got $2 or $3 million in a cafe and expect them to trust you with your money. So you've got to have a team. You've got to at least look the part, and to look the part, you're looking at $500,000 worth of expenses.
Yep.
So once if you ended up buying a business with a couple of $1 million worth of revenue, half that's gone in expenses to begin with.
Yep.
And then what's the debt on that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously you've got a nice premises here, nice office staff, like room to move. People walk in, they see it's an established business. It's got offices and furniture and nice furniture. How do you see the sort of the you mentioned out the back of the car, but the sort of the work from home, online, totally online, 100% online business?
Well, it's probably a generational thing. Younger people wouldn't see it as that much of a problem, but they're really, I don't think that they're not going to have enough money in their superannuation to be an ideal client. And those sort of people in their 50s and 60s and 70s, they want to see someone face to face. They don't want to. They will work on Zoom sometimes, but
at some point they want to see you.
They need to see your face. They want to make sure you could be anyone. Really, it makes it even more difficult over the telephone or over Zoom or that sort of thing.
Yep, very good. So talk to me about your business now. What sort of clientele? Who's your target client or your ideal client now?
Oh, look, because we bought a lot of businesses, there's a fair bit of age in it. So we do need to start building up those 45 plus age group to have that longevity. So you've got to always think about, when you're buying a business, if the exiting advisor is, 65 or 70 and all the clients have been there for 30 or 40 years, they're not going to be there forever.
Yep.
So there's multiple areas you've got to look at. Are you taking the whole business, or is somebody chopping off the tail of a larger one to get rid of the clients that they don't want to deal with for one reason or another?
Yep.
So are you buying somebody else's problem? Are you buying the whole business? Are they exiting the business? You got to make sure in your contract they are exiting the business.
Yep, as in the profession altogether.
Altogether,
not just that business and then starting up.
Leaving the country would be a good idea. So you've got to have restraints in there, and they're only worth so much. Contracts are only worth as much money as you're willing to spend on them in court. So you've got to feel comfortable that the person you're dealing with is telling you the truth.
Yep.
Yeah, because look, that can come back to bite you.
Yep. So you've got some retired clients already, and you're looking to build out the 45 to
the 45 plus.
Yep.
Yeah, so really getting into the retirement planning is probably the most ideal space to start growing longer term clients with sort of $400,000 or $500,000 plus.
Yep. Okay, so that's the target. Are they particular professions, or have you really narrowed in, or are they just local?
Well, no. We're not so worried about the types of clients they are. Well, there's different personalities. You'll learn in this business that there are more difficult professions to deal with than others.
Yes, I think we know those.
so if you have a whole heap of those, they can be hugely analytical and time consuming. Look, it's much easier to work with one person with $2 million than 10 with 200,000.
Yeah, right. Yeah, less SOAs.
Yeah, it's just got to get the numbers. The amount of work involved in doing a file nowadays, you're not doing it compliantly unless you're giving it the relevant amount of hours that it needs.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how efficient you are, how good you are as a planner. The paperwork takes so much time, and it needs to be done absolutely spot on. Otherwise, you're in trouble. So, you need to go through it slowly. You need to go through it methodically. You got to have it checked. You've got to do audits of your own work, ideally on a monthly basis, to make sure that you don't lose things. Loose ends are the death of you in this industry. So,
that's a very good tip.
Yeah.
Talk to me about getting your own license. How long did that process take, and how did you go about it, and what was the experience like?
Yeah, look, it wasn't too bad. We did our own license application.
Yep. So you didn't get the lawyers to do it?
No.
Obviously
there are groups out there that'll do it for you, but then you've still got to come up with all the documentation to justify everything. So you're only paying them to do 50% of it. So we did it in-house. It only took after about 6 months, we rang him up and we said, how's it going there? And the bloke, I think he forgot about he either went on holidays or he forgot about our application.
Right.
So 24 hours later, after the 3 months more down the track, they said, bring us back in 3 months. Some some nice girl named Cassandra just ticked it off. So
Right. Okay. So you sort of got a little bit lost in the system at some point?
yeah, and it worked out to our favour. So, and that was just before they started to make it a lot more difficult to get your own license. So,
So how long you had your own license for?
3 years now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're both responsible managers on there?
Yeah, we are.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it does take there is a lot of work in the auditing, and you've got to pay someone to help you.
Yep.
But we've got, terrific support from our compliance contractor. And look, it's not for everyone. It's certainly not for everyone because it's a serious undertaking.
Yep.
I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah.
Stephanie does essentially everything on that side.
And so how has that changed your mindset from being, a business owner to then being a licensee, and has that sort of added additional rigor to that, or is it?
Well, look, it's just changed our perspective. Really, we're trying to grow not as a solo practice because look, we've hit our ceiling already. People absolute maximum I reckon should be looking after 100 clients.
Yep.
We're doing a grade program with QUT.
Yep.
So we're going to be taking a group of kids through a training plan every sort of 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
A handful of them.
So that grad plan, is that leading them into working as an associate?
Yeah, it is.
Like a servicing provider in the office, or is it like it's not going to be the professional year, is it?
No. Look, they've got to start at the bottom. We've mapped out everything, every job in this business, and unless you're in a bank where you only sort of get a red and green button or a round peg and a square peg, and if it doesn't fit in that hole, you can't do anything.
Yep.
It's really about teaching this new generation from start to finish. Because look, even I came into it as the generation who I can't really work without a paraplanner. So we've been working on our system to be able to generate our own documents in house with a digital template, which dramatically reduces the amount of time you've got to deal with these documents. But if you're an advisor and you've got, say these kids actually get to be advisors in say 5 years' time, they've got a few impediments standing in the way purely because of their age. But they need to know they've got to learn admin first. They've got to learn when a problem comes up, how do you fix it? Otherwise, you can't just hire an admin who knows what they're doing. It just doesn't really exist.
Or you've got to retrain them anyway into your systems.
into your business.
And your process and your beliefs and your values in your business. Talk to me about that grad program. So how did you start that up and how does it work?
Well, look, we've hired many good kids over the last 10 years, but none of them really wanted to be in the industry long term. So we spent money and time on them, getting them up to speed, and then some of them have been incredible. And then they leave.
Yep.
And we're like, well, I don't want any more kids who don't want to be in the industry because, it's a significant amount of your time to get them to a level where they're helpful and you can trust them and they're not just task by task.
Yep.
So, to have strength in the practice, you've got to have an extremely strong admin side. Yeah. So we want to teach them from making telephone calls and doing research and submitting documents through to teach them how to be a paraplanner, how to structure the diary notes, and eventually get to a position where you can put them in there for a professional year. There's no one's going to. It's a funny system they've come up with. Who's going to pay 50, 60, 70, 80 grand to train somebody, and then are they any good at the end of that as well? Can you trust them? Put them in front of clients that are worth lots of money to the business, and rely on them to not only be a practitioner but efficient and a salesperson, and have that experience that only comes with time.
Yeah, exactly right. It's difficult for a lot of small businesses to look at funding that model, so we'll end up with I guess the larger businesses bringing them through, and like you said before, where they go after they've finished their year, you want them to stay as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So that's why we're trying to build a model where we have a model where we're turning into a hybrid sort of franchise.
Yep. Tell me about the model.
Well, look, we just want to have some ARs who we can drive business to, because I've spent the last couple of years learning how to generate leads myself.
Yep.
And running our own in-house marketing.
Yep.
So we can generate the business. We just need hands on deck who are proficient, reliable, and want to be in the industry. And it's the way we've structured it. It's more profitable than buying. Getting yourself into debt, buying a business, and then going through all the pitfalls that we went through.
Yep. So the win-win for both.
Well, that's it. If you can earn from the day dot, and then after sort of 4 or 5 years, you've got a solid, book of 100 clients with support without the costs.
Yep.
It's more efficient. We're looking for, we look at efficiencies every day in our business. So, we've been able to create a model where people can, the new generation can get in, have not a free license, but somebody who will support them without taking all them, a lot of large slice of their income.
So is that more like a professional practice, say a law firm or
it's more like that. Yeah. So they will work under our brand. They leverage off all of our infrastructure. We do all the compliance, check everything, make sure everything gets done from a legal perspective. Feed business through to them. So
fantastic. Okay, so then that's you're almost doing all of the bits around the outside, and you're getting them to focus on just the advice,
just the work,
and the relationship.
Yeah,
piece.
That's it. Yeah. So it's we don't want to grow a large dealer group with all sorts of yahoos that you don't know anything about. Like I just can't imagine having 250 practices under your license that you really don't have any idea what is going on. We worry enough about 100 clients.
Yeah.
And whether everything gets done properly for those clients, let alone thousands of them. I don't know how they survive without getting...
Yeah, exactly. So all the systems and processes in the back end you're going to take care of. How are you looking to grow this? How many are you looking to grow to?
Oh, look, it is based on our insurance as well. We're only allowed to take on 2 this year.
Yep.
And then we renegotiate, adding a handful more next year.
Yeah, okay. So then your PI has had some input into how steady your steady growth plans.
Yeah, that's it. They just don't want us to go and just collect people.
They want you to stay in control, obviously.
control the whole thing. So look, it's never going to be a monstrous group. It doesn't need to be. If we're focusing on higher net worth clients, we don't need volume of people. We need volume funds under management.
Yep. Okay, so that's about just sort of steady growth to a larger professional practice.
Yeah, and make sure it's profitable in all areas. It's manageable from a lifestyle perspective as well as workload, because I've been reading some of these reports coming out of I can't remember where I was on the FPA site, and there's 2/3 of advisors are seeking psychological support, because of the stress and and we're doing some work with a performance coach, and there's a chart that explains, from understimulated up to top of the curve where you're at maximum sort of efficiency, and then all the way down to depression, and if there's too much for we understand that people need some balance. We haven't had it, so we want to create, a viable model that's, people aren't overloaded.
Yep.
From a workload perspective.
So viable for everybody, though.
But it needs to be viable across the board. If it's going to be a long-term thing, if is it going to be a 10 and 20-year plan?
Yep.
Everyone's got to be happy in there where they're sitting, and earning, and just not under as much pressure, because rules keep changing.
That's the true constant.
It's going to keep happening. It really, I don't know. It really should get easier once everyone's done their graduate. The graduate degree. They should be able to reduce some of the work, red tape. But they probably won't. We've always got to be a year or two ahead of what we think is going to happen.
Yeah, and now talk to me about your performance coach. You mentioned you had a performance coach. How long have you had them for?
Oh, look, my wife just did a AIA session. It was, had her solely CDP points along with it. I think the latest Vanessa Bennett. I haven't even started my. I think you've spoken to her before.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to do the staff and I are going to do a session with her because Stephanie got a lot out of it.
Yep.
And it's all about. Doesn't matter how many hours you do. It's what you do in those hours.
Energy credits and understanding when you get the most out of things.
Yeah. Well,
and balancing the young family as well as the business and all those things. Yeah.
Because look, if you overdo it, you get burned out, and then you can't leave. It's not like you just can't shut the door and switch the light off, especially if you've got a debt attached to it.
Yep.
You're in there, and you're in the trenches, and to make sure, you don't feel like a lot of the financial advisors in the industry do.
Yeah. Yeah. Understanding where that burnout point and that slope, when you start going down the slope, and to be able to recognise that early.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's got to be, we need people to, be able to go through their daily routine, smooth and consistent pace without getting overcooked.
Yep, fair enough. Now, you mentioned about bringing on a couple of new authorised reps this year. Apart from that, what else do you want to take the business to, sort of in the short term future?
No, look, we're just reducing our client numbers at the moment. That's where we're at the moment.
How do you say that to a client? Is it you've got a box, and what sort of conversations are you having, or are you selling bits off?
Well, look, we've always had less active clients than others. If it's getting to the stage where it's not just about the client's portfolio, but also their attitude.
Yeah,
we're really we need to make sure that people
are they actively engaged with you or not.
Yeah, well, that's it. Whether they get stuff back to you properly, you're not chasing them around for things. That just creates more admin, it's wasted time. You're not charging for it. So it's just another part of, trying to find efficiencies in every little, scratch them out of every little hole that you can.
Yep. And you mentioned charging. How have you gone with your pricing structure? Is that something that's been a moving piece of the jigsaw puzzle, or is it?
Look, our pricing's been pretty steady across the board because, look, just by chance, when we took on the first practice, the lady used to charge pretty heavily.
Yep.
And KPMG put a study out the other day. They reckon it's somewhere in the 4,000s to produce a statement of advice. So unless a client is bringing in $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 plus, it doesn't work.
Yep.
So going and buying a whole heap of C's and D's, as they call them in the transactional world, that have $2,000 or $3,000 or less is a bad idea.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those things. If the C's and D's are usually the ones that aren't engaged.
Oh yeah,
and don't have that engagement relationship.
And with an annual opt-in, what are you going to do? Like, I don't even understand how a transaction is going to happen unless someone is naive enough with this annual opt-in. Without a transition plan. That's added even another level of complexity to a transaction, and that's come in since we've put a line underneath.
Yeah, interesting.
Doing transactions
because you're probably right. Those clients will be in a few years' time if they're not responsive, then they're not going to be clients anymore. And
our whole thing's gone. You're left with a debt, and you're going under. You lost the house.
Yeah.
So how do you get in there and even get these clients to sign a new form?
Yeah.
To keep that revenue.
Yep.
Going. So it's even more difficult than it used to be.
So at the moment, you're really going through and looking at the engagement of your existing clients to say which ones are not going to likely be engaged in the future, and we need to work out what we're going to do with them now.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, fantastic. And long-term plans, how do you see it all shaping out? Obviously, there's going to be maybe less advisors and more people.
Well, look, we're probably going to be reducing, our client numbers down to, really quite manageable.
Yep.
The ones that we work with personally.
Yep.
Those $1 million plus clients.
Yep.
And just run a much more efficient operation, and then grow the external. Well, they're essentially self-employed external ARs because we don't want. We've hired multiple ARs over the years, and it's never worked out. So we feel that people who are self-employed are going to have the right attitude.
Yep.
For growth.
Yep.
So we don't we don't want to be involved in their day-to-day. We just want them to run their own operation, but just have, be able to leverage off the infrastructure that we have.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Fantastic. Thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your journey. It's been incredible. If somebody wanted to continue the conversation with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Oh, look, there's always our phone number on the website, Webster's Wealth.
And the URL, Webster's Wealth, Webster's with an S.
Webster's with an S.
Yep. And what about LinkedIn?
We're both on, Stephanie and I are both on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So we're available there. But look, the website's got our office number, and we are looking for people who are interested to look at a pseudo self-employed model.
Yep.
Because you've got two parts to any business. Doesn't matter what it is. Generally it's operations and then business development, and you can't do both properly in this industry.
Yep.
So unless somebody's driving one half of it, you can't. Practitioners just don't have the ability to grow unless they have somebody helping them on the other side.
Yeah, to divvy their time up between the two.
Yeah, so I'll end up moving into just pretty much the marketing role.
Yep.
In the future.
Fantastic. To the business growth.
Yeah, so we build the profile, build the traffic, generate more. Because look, there's so much movement, and with all these advisors leaving, there's going to be no one left in 3 years' time. Hardly anyone left, and some of them are going to have their nappies on. There's only going to be a handful, sort of in my age bracket.
Yep.
Just about to turn 40 or 40 to 50 left. So there's going to be a huge amount of movement in clients from old, whether the practice has been sold and they don't want to stay there, looking for a new advisor.
Yep.
It's a great opportunity for people to pluck business out of the pool.
Yeah.
And look, you don't need a lot. You just need the right ones. You need to make sure your business is structured properly. The compliance is just going to keep coming. So unless you have some support there, it may not work out for you if you go into a straight transaction.
Yeah.
Just be careful with the transactions.
learn from the mistakes of the past. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We look forward to following the journey.
Thank you very much.